Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and I welcome all of you back once again for another rage video where tonight, ladies and gentlemen, we now finally get to the song I have deliberately decided to cover last for this one reason. Now, I don't know, ladies and gentlemen, if I want to give you guys the backstory to why I love this song so much, and like any great song or what people interpret as a great song, there is always some level of context that goes into it, a personal relationship, if you will. And my personal relationship with quite a lot of music is one. It's not. I don't even pretend it to be as interesting as I probably am trying to make it out to be. But the point is that it's my own. It's my own history, and I don't think there's anything wrong with it. I don't know if my history is any more important or necessary to hear than anybody else's, but still, the case is, it's mine, and it's mine to enjoy. And to all those out there who know, I'm trying to also think to myself a little bit, ladies and gentlemen, about what other songs from the 1980s were as big or as iconic as Everybody Wants to Rule the World. A lot of stuff from Queen probably would make the list as well. Let's see, George Michael and Wham, pretty easy choice. The Reflex was also really good. Karma Chameleon, yes. Going Underground by The Jam, also a really, really good choice. I know that is George Michael and Wham. Was Mariah Carey's, All I Want for Christmas, was that 1980s or was that slightly later? I have to think about that a little bit. I've got like a giant. It's been such a long time, but I have like this. Well, I suppose I could get it out now. Just see some of the things. Dexy's Midnight Runners, Come On Eileen was another really strong example. Let's see, fantastic 80s disc one. This one again covers stuff like Wake Me Up, The Reflex, Take On Me, like easy. Billy Ocean, Rick Astley, Cyndi Lauper, Swing Out Sisters, Virgil Sharkey, Haircut 100, Elton John, Terence Trent D'Arby, Eddie Grant, easy, Mel and Kim, Men at Work, Belarus Sum, Paul Young, ELO, and Kim Carnes. And again, it goes further, ladies and gentlemen. Frankie Goes to Hollywood. I don't know anything else by Frankie Goes to Hollywood than Two Tribes. Dead or Alive, The Human League, Howard Jones, The Thompson Twins, Foreigner. A lot of metal stuff. It was only just finding its footing in the 1980s. But I'm sort of like more going again. Jam, Elvis Costello, The Stranglers, Temple Tudor, Kim Wilde, Nina, Tony Basil. How is it even possible? Like, Tony Basil only really had one song, an entire career, but it's still repeated over 40 years later. Well, it must be from guys like you, Mickey, is probably what it is. And again, the list is endless. But the point is, level 42, another really massive group from the 80s. But the point I want to make, ladies and gentlemen, just before we go any further, is that I'll go into why I love this song for what it is, not just because of my for context reasons, but also what makes the song so good on its own. So I've waited the entire album for this, but to be fair, outside of Broken, this is the shortest song on this album. But ironically enough, considering everything else that's on this album, I almost want to say this is almost one of the weaker songs, ironically. But to be honest, I can't say it's not a question of whether or not things are better than the other. They're all good for very, very different reasons. I mean, I can't really say Listen is like any better than Working Hour, or Head Over Heels is better than I Believe. They're all the songs are very, very different. So, if you guys are ready, let's conclude and let's take a seat off the big chair. Everybody wants to rule the world. In 3, 2, 1, and... I think the first immediate thing, and again, going through the whole of this album anyway, helps me identify a little bit. But the beat to this is very. I think there's like a greater emphasis on things that not necessarily have been greatly explored before. And what I mean by that is, just hold on for me a second, guys. If you compare to how heavily influenced and how heavily dreamlike Working Hour was with the introduction of like a saxophone all throughout, when you hear the there's like almost like, I don't really know what it's like trying to emphasize, but rather it's trying to get something started. Like, here we are, now take a listen to this. And because quite a lot of the other songs on this album were kind of not quite as like that. Shout maybe a little bit like that, but it's a very, very hard thing to explain, because there is like there's a real beat to this. There's like a very consistent flow. And maybe it's just because this was released as a single and maybe a lot of the other ones weren't. But again, considering the flow to stuff like what we're looking like Mother's Talk, especially, which almost seems like pulled out of, like, you could almost put in like an all-nighter in a nightclub. The flow from that is extremely like energetic, and it's extremely easy to get into. This one feels like there's a little bit more to it, and I wish that again I could say why. But it seemed we'll continue doing this. It's actually discussing like the finite details about the music itself is really difficult, because it does sound, I don't know if it's like they're not emphasizing certain notes, or whether or not it's just when you come out of something like Listen, which was very, very abstract, into something with a bit more structure. It's again a very different thing to compare.
Welcome to your life. There's no turning back. Even while we sleep, we will find you acting on your best behavior. Turn your back on Mother Nature. Everybody wants to rule the world. It's my own design. It's my own remorse. Help me to decide. Help me make the most of freedom and of pleasure.
Most of freedom and of pleasure, nothing ever lasts forever. Everybody wants to rule the world.
Holding hands while the walls come tumbling down. When they do, I'll be right behind you.
The dude right behind me.
So sad
I think I've almost figured it out, ladies and gentlemen. I think I figured out exactly what it's meant to be. About what about why it works so. It is incredibly subdued. Like, when you hear Roland sing, he sings he sings low. He doesn't like it. A good comparison is something like maybe Geddy Lee from Rush, where his singing it's mirroring on slightly higher pitched. If you want a good example, go back and listen to something like Limelight, when he goes, all the world's in need of stage, and we are merely players, performers and portrayers. There are very strong cases of the things he wants to emphasize, and Lee's voice is actually very, very appropriate for it. And again, the music to stuff like Limelight is good as well, because it starts off, it begins, dun 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 dun. It's I don't really want to say gripping is really the word I'm looking for. It's more it's softer, but it helps you get into it. I think it's it's like there's something of like in contrast to Everybody Wants to Rule the World. There's something soft and very, very approachable, but there's also something quite like harsh. There's an intriguing like clash of styles, and not just that, it's in the lyrics easily, especially when you get into both There's a Room Where the Light Won't Find You, where it seems like when Kurt comes in and chimes like in like a chorus with Roland, they bow together, and then you listen to straight up what they have to say, and it makes you kind of wonder, what exactly is all this about? Acting on your best behavior, turn your back on Mother Nature, everybody wants to rule the world. So does it want us to feel like if we want to rule the world, then how exactly do people really do that? Do they think like the idea of like the human condition is just like a facade, and people just behave in such a way? It's just to avoid. I think the idea of the whole idea of the song is to is that if you want to be unnatural, then you've got to go away from certain things that make the world seem a lot more of an ideal sort of place. It's my own design, it's my own rewards. Help me to decide. Help me make the most of freedom and of pleasure. He's tried to somehow balance something out. In fact, maybe almost like a better and a more appropriate time would be everybody wants to rule their world. They want to feel like they are the masters of their own corner of the universe. That they feel in control, that they feel like they know exactly what they are doing with themselves, and they know that they're not going to be bogged down by things like, failure or fear or grief or stuff like that, or even out of... Because the problem is that when that sort of thing happens, you've also got to be consciously aware of the fact that it's not just for the things you don't like. You've also got to make sure it's for the things you do like as well. It's being disciplined and making sure you're not overindulging in the things you do like, but also you are not also being bogged down in the things that are still there. Bad things still do happen, ladies and gentlemen, whether or not we want to ignore them or not. And remember, when it gets to There's a Room Where the Light Won't Find You, holding hands while the walls come tumbling down. When they do, I'll be right behind you. So, is it possible this is just a friend looking out, saying, you think you know what you're doing, you feel like this is the right thing to do, but the light, like everything that, it's like everything the light touches is our kingdom. But rather, if we went without the sun, then would we even survive? And it's like watching a guy set himself up, but not for failure, but we've got to be prepared to like break his fall. We've got to be there to help somebody who suffers a fall from their hubris. I think that's what it's meant to be all about. It's meant to be a tale of like of pride, of hubris, of being a modern Prometheus. Because deep down, if we had all the power and we didn't have to do anything else for the rest of our lives, we could live in comfort, knowing that anyone poses any threat, we could just make them disappear. But nobody stays on top forever, ladies and gentlemen. That's another part that's probably going to be emphasized a little bit later on, and that's I think that's fascinating. You know what I mean? Say that you'll never need it. One headline, why believe it? I also like this as well. And there we have it, ladies and gentlemen. That officially concludes Songs from the Big Chair. And again, I'll just emphasize this for those wondering at home. I still think this is easily one of my favorite songs ever made. Because, the tune to this is iconic. I think its message is extremely relatable because, again, one headline, why believe it? What about all the people who think they are above those of everyone else? It only takes the one headline to suddenly make you think, well, hang on a minute, no, they're not indestructible because they say there's no such thing as bad publicity, yada, yada, yada. So I think that's what they said about Bono as well. Yeah, and the tune is iconic. Man, I can't get away from this song. I really can't, and it's one of the great things about music in general, ladies and gentlemen, is that when you come across something that you really, really like and you can't explain it, that's when you know it should be, because when you come to understand what it is, that's why you can respect it more. But if you're still in a state of mystery, if you can't quite interpret or work out exactly what it's meant to be all about, that's what makes it even better, because there's still a layer of mystery, a layer of mysticism that perhaps maybe ordinary people like you and I don't fully understand. But is it just about understanding? Can't we just be allowed to enjoy it for what it is? That's a serious question, and I feel that's the sort of thing we should do. And I know this is a little bit rich coming from me, considering I talk in this strain for the best part of 4 years now, but only ever when talking about the things I love, like my music and stuff like that. Because there's something else that you don't get, so perhaps with other songs, and this one absolutely takes the cake in that regard. Backstory. April 2015. I was 17 years old, and I was just struggling just to get through the last 2 months of my first year in in sixth form. To be honest, that the whole of year 12 for me was something of a drag, because I didn't technically get a lot out of the things I was studying. A lot of things seemed to be going wrong very, very quickly, and I was only just. It wasn't a case of me just trying to make things better. It was just for me trying to make the most out of this very bad situation, and I was just kind of just going through the motions, I suppose. And it was not really the sort of thing you would suggest it was going to greatly encourage people to try. And that was always one of the many problems I kind of had during that period in my life, is that I felt there was increasingly few things to openly encourage me to try harder. And this is a blow for many reasons, ladies and gentlemen, because you think for 1 minute as to the sort of great people in history who probably went through this stage as a period of unfulfillment, a period of despair and despondency. Maybe because they didn't like the way they were at that time, or that there were, again, like I said, too many bad things going wrong, and it didn't seem as if there was much hope in anything. I'm not talking about desperate things and that, but it just felt like school then and everything else just felt like the sort of thing I had to do. Not something I actually wanted to do for any other reason than that's just what I did when I was younger. Meanwhile, ladies and gentlemen, I came across... I actually do have the CDs up here. It was a collection of CDs that my dad had back in his Tuareg. It's a little bit damaged right now, and I don't think you could get this 2 for £5, and there's a lot here. It's called the Greatest Hits Collection. It's giant, it's gold, and there are 5 discs on this, and the first is the greatest movie hits, the greatest hit ballads, the greatest pop hits, the greatest rock hits, and the greatest romantic hits. And you get stuff like the Platters, you get Dusty Springfield, you get Smokey Robinson and the Miracles, you get Rod Stewart, you get Big Country, Robert Palmer, you also get Jim Diamond on here as well. The Reader's Digest Association Limited 2001. Wow. I'm going to see even how many of these things are these things are still here. Hits, ballads, rock hits are still here. Greatest romance hits. So yeah, the only thing that isn't on here is the pop hits and the hit ballads. But I do pretty much know everything else on here. So I could literally just go onto Apple Music and just get any of these right now and stuff like that. In fact, maybe that's what I should do, to be honest. That'd be pretty cool. And again, let me just put this back. Again, the thing I kind of want to bring it back to you guys is that those were the sort of things I was listening to when I was 17. I wasn't particularly... I knew of pop songs that were being played at that time. Sorry by Justin Bieber was being plugged everywhere. Stuff like Fifth Harmony was just coming into fashion as well. For those out there who don't know what Fifth Harmony is, I wouldn't blame you, but I did have friends back then who were raving a lot about Fifth Harmony, and like I said before, it was just one of those periods where I just kind of felt flimsy and not very useful and just listless. Also, I had that summer 3 weeks with the NCS. So that was, that was something. Let me tell you. Yeah, enough said about that. But because I didn't have like a phone or an iPod or anything like that, I actually had a giant like one of those comic little CD players in which you just pop the disc in, pop some headphones in, and just listen to it. And I would plug this thing in endlessly. Let me tell you something now, ladies and gentlemen. And that's why I think I wanted to play Everybody Wants to Rule the World last, because it was the greatest pop hits, is what I was like listening to almost all the time. Again, Tom Jones, Smokey Robinson, the new Seekers as well. These were the Level 42, Rod Stewart. These were the sort of things I was listening to back then, and the stuff like that stays with you. You know what I mean? Sometimes it may be fate. Sometimes it may be just destiny. Sometimes it's just, again, being in the right place at the right time. And Everybody Wants to Rule the World was one of the ones I always kept back to and always made sure to listen to last, because I loved its energy. I loved its ambition. I loved the fact that it seemed to be saying something to me, and whether or not like I really picked up on it at the time, there was something in it, and maybe it was something I hadn't seen before or hadn't seen in myself before, because I am longing for the day, ladies and gentlemen, when I do want to talk about my entire sixth form career, when I was from 16 to 18. I want to be able to go over the entire story, because it's like it would be nearly a 4-hour long story, and I don't think there's enough like space on my camera without having to use one of my new sand discs here. That I've had this one for literally like months and never actually had to use it yet, because this thing goes on and on and on. So, to conclude this entire saga, ladies and gentlemen, without giving too much away, this song has stayed with me since 2015, and it's certainly going to stay with me for a very, very long time to come. And I don't blame it. Not one bit. Thank you so much, Tears for Fears. And I thank you, all of you, who have come down and to take a listen. I certainly hope that... what is this? Our fifth album completed on RageCon's Album Assault chart has been a much satisfactory. Because I literally did this, I pumped all of this out in literally 2 days. And I'm almost... What exactly would be a good follow-up to this? Do I want to maybe go something a little bit harder, maybe do Van Halen next? Van Halen next, or should I maybe go a little bit further back and do Master of Reality? There's the list is like literally endless, and as I said before, there could be stuff on here that people grew up with. There could be stuff here that have stuck with some people, and I certainly hope to treat each one with respect and great courtesy, because it seems only fair, ladies and gentlemen. It seems only fair. So anyway, finally, that is going to do it for Tears for Fears and Songs from the Big Chair. I hope all of you guys have enjoyed this, again, fromage and voyage and journey. And certainly, again, if you're watching this in chronological order, this would be a very weird time to say it, but it's goodbye from Tears for Fears, it's goodbye from Songs from the Big Chair, and it's goodbye from me. Goodbye.